My name is Malin, and I'm a researcher and practitioner. At the moment, I divide my time between Linköping University and the Swedish Correctional Agency. Today, I'm speaking primarily from my role as a researcher, but my talk is based on a problem that we have identified at the Correctional Agency. We are in this case me and my colleague Kenneth, who is the enterprise architect. Together with an experienced correctional officer, we developed a new kind of digitalization strategy. We use the storytelling approach to avoid being locked in technical choices. The client Charlie comes to life and the reader gets to follow his or her path through a more digitized correctional system. In my past life, I am the researcher and developer of a portfolio management framework for IT governance. It required 20 years and about 500 cases of problem solving in more than 100 organizations, where I also collected the data that formed the basis for 3 crucial scientific knowledge contributions. In 2006, the knowledge product was commercialized and then was named PM3. In 2011, I sold the immaterial rights together with my company, a company we would today call a knowledge-based startup. Thus, the link to the academy was lost, and PM3 has over the past 10 years been developed based on practical experience and in competition with other commercial IT governance frameworks, such as ITIL and SAFE. I myself have since 2013 worked with innovation in public sector. So I'm not an architect, but in PM3 there is a central concept, maintenance object architecture, which I based on the 4-layer architecture, and it has come to be regarded as business architecture in many Swedish organizations. This talk is not primarily about IT architecture, but rather about management of digitization, which provides space for architectural choices. It is my perception that the gap between researchers and practitioners has widened, and therefore I have taken the initiative for the think tank that practice researchers. The members are researchers and informed practitioners. The aim is to support managers in the public sector with digitization decisions that are based on knowledge, experience, and judgments. After this introduction, I will describe the concept of practice research. In section 3, we will take a look at some of the conclusions of the 2 evaluation studies of portfolio management that I was given the opportunity to do 10 years after the sale of PM3. These conclusions led me to make a final statement with commercialized frameworks for IT governance. However, one of our conclusions was also that architectural choices must be given more space in the analysis that should precede decisions about the digitization portfolio. Once again being inspired by the architects, Kenneth and I began to explore the concept of business capability as a possible bridge between portfolio management and architectural management. In the 4th section, business capability, we describe the conclusions we have reached with the caveat that this is work in progress. I have been helped by some other members of the think tank as narrators, so you can get some variation in narrator voices. But let me now first tell you about practice research, the working method that I have used for 30 years of knowledge development. Section 2. Practice research. Practice research has its theoretical roots in pragmatism. For the researcher, a fruitful dialogue between researchers and informed practitioners is central because knowledge has its value in action. The researcher is interested in practical problems and generates questions on the basis of existing knowledge. There are many methods for research, but they all have in common that the question is formulated, followed by a continuous theory generation, and ending with the publication with new knowledge. Problem solving is conducted in organizations in collaboration with researchers who operate in the academy. Practice research is thus characterized by two parallel processes and collaboration between researchers and practitioners. We describe problem solving in organizations with the following 4 steps. The diagnosis, where we identify the problem, which is followed by a design step. In the design step, existing theories are used as instruments. In the design step, the degree of change is determined. Should the identified problem be solved with the help of a refinement, improvement, development, or innovation? The more extensive a change is, the higher up in the organization the decision must be made. Development and innovation always means a dissolution of something existing. This is followed by implementation, which always means a gradual refinement. The circle ends by evaluating the result. In this way, organizations gradually move forward by solving problems. But data is also generated that can be used by researchers who wishes to generate knowledge based on credible and rich empirical data. This model is central throughout this presentation, and we will return to it several times. Now, let's move on to the portfolio management evaluation study. Section 3. Portfolio Management Evaluation Study.
The project-based approach has long since been the norm for digitalization, but it does not sufficiently enough account for the existing digital landscape. Today, more than 90% of digitalization resources in an organization are used to refine and improve an already existing digital landscape. 40 years ago, the need to manage existing digital resources was identified. 10 years later, the issue began to be researched by practitioners and researchers in collaboration. Another 20 years later, the framework PM3 had become a standard. In parallel with the development of PM3, several other frameworks have been developed and commercialized. The existing of several overlapping frameworks that integrate portfolio management in different ways have led to both confusion and energy leakage. These frameworks have at times been developed at the universities, but are now just that, commercialized. The frameworks now claims to solve both management and implementation of digitalization, and the framework that claims to solve everything probably solves nothing. So we made a reflection. We in this case is a group with special interest in portfolio management that is a part of the think tank, the practice researchers. We sensed that there was a reason to talk about framework optimism, since we could see a trend of overconfidence that changing frameworks would solve the need for business IT alignment. We therefore decided to conduct a research-based evaluation study of the imprints that these frameworks have made in practice when it comes to portfolio management. The framework PM3 is a Swedish framework based in the Scandinavian School on Systems Development. The starting point is that improvement, refinement, operation and user support should be kept together to achieve business IT alignment. These should therefore be considered a work practice labeled maintenance. In this way, you can contribute to strategic alignment in an organization. The concept of a maintenance object became the means for this. The maintenance object can, somewhat simplified, be said to consist in the digital functionality of a work practice. The responsibility for a specific maintenance object was divided between those responsible for work practice and IT managers. The concept was further researched to include the organization's total number of maintenance objects, which together constitute a maintenance object architecture. The starting point was the organization's work practices. Strategic alignment would be achieved by formulating assignments that were based on the organization's objectives. The assignments were then gathered in a portfolio. But a maintenance object was never an objective in itself. It was just a mean to achieve business IT alignment and strategic alignment. However, the maintenance object was the scientific knowledge contribution. That was the intention of PM3, but how did it turn out in practice? We have conducted 2 qualitative evaluations of organizations that apply portfolio management for digitalization. While working on this, we have been gliding from evaluation to diagnosis as a result of being guided by an open research question on portfolio management and decision-making from an organizational perspective. We based the evaluation on a large number of decisions, participatory observations, interviews and documents. We have also read about 100 scientific articles. In the analysis, a pattern of 4 perspectives on portfolio management that have influenced portfolio management in public sector appears. These are maintenance, development, finance, and agile portfolio management. We conclude that the use of portfolio management in organizations has contributed the following values. Firstly, the digitalization issue is represented in the board of managers, mainly due to the financial management and the need for cost control. Secondly, an activated link between business and IT through the knowledge contribution maintenance object in PM3. This is where we believe that the explanation lies for the fact that the maintenance object architecture has come to be regarded as the business layer in the 4th layer architecture. Thirdly, control, stability, and consolidation through coordination of digital resources and common working methods for operation and user support. At the same time, we identify the following problems. Firstly, the existence of several portfolios for digitalization, divided into projects and maintenance as a result of using several frameworks. Secondly, parallel decision-making structures and role holders where knowledge, experience and judgments doesn't match assigned responsibilities. Thirdly, portfolio management offices with controller focus. And fourthly, the strategic alignment with the organization's objectives in focus is left out as long as digitalization assignments are administered separately rather than in a portfolio with a holistic view. Our evaluation shows that crucial digitalization decisions are often made in parallel structures that have emerged through the use of trending frameworks for IT governance, rather than in the organization's board of managers. Frameworks has a tendency to short-circuit ordinary decision-making structures and reward special interests as a result of putting the framework in the foreground instead of designing the portfolio management based on the organization's assignment and management. In the evaluation, we have also taken into account the increased importance of digitalization in society and the progress that has taken place over time. The way in which organizations today manage their digitalization portfolio is primarily based on an inventory of existing digital resources with the intention of enabling consolidation and efficiency. The so-called maintenance objects have become containers for inventory at the same time as the existence of several portfolios for digitalization. This is contrary to the knowledge contribution that was the basis for PM3, where the assignment was placed in the foreground. In the shift between computerization and digitalization, new demands are placed on organization and management. Among other things, we see that there's a need for a great emphasis to be placed on architectural choices, that portfolio management should not primarily be an instrument for financial management, and that all types of digital resources that generates data need to be embraced, as exchange and analysis of data can then be transformed into knowledge that enhances the quality of work. In light of the increasing importance of digitalization in society, we can conclude the following. If organizations are to succeed, new thinking must take place about how responsibilities are distributed, how suppliers are governed, but above all, decision-making needs to inhabit existing management structures in order to achieve business IT alignment as well as strategic alignment.
Section 4. Business capability. In this section, we are back at the Swedish Correctional Agency. The agency has since 2015 been working with digital readiness. The work was intensified in spring 2017 when the agency got a new CIO. He had set his sights on bimodality. What we describe here is a group work carried out by the IT department. In the era of digitalization, we need to increase the pace of our digitalization work, dismantle outdated digital legacy, and counteract instances of shadow IT. In addition, the question of semantic interoperability must be addressed if we are able to meet society's expectations for exchange of data. From the CIO, Kenneth and I was given the task to explore whether business capability could act as a bridge between portfolio management and architectural management. We began by making a diagnosis. A group consisting of an architect, a portfolio management expert, an analyst, and a project manager was given the task. They made an inventory of the frameworks that are on the market today and examined how other organizations have addressed the problem. But whether capability only emulates the four-layer architecture dressed as capabilities is a question that lingers after their final report. They also report that the business capability mapping tends to become too detailed. Kenneth and I draw the similar conclusions when we met colleagues from other public organizations. We could not find a single business capability map despite diligent efforts. Kenneth and I took the decision that the analyst and I should take the question with us to the academy and perform a delimited literature review. We also included a Gartner report in the search for the theoretical roots of the concepts of capability management. The concept of capability management is used in several subject areas, but in our literature review we stay in the domain of digitalization. In this domain, IT is defined as a service practice that supports the business practices. It turns out that there have been others than us who has wondered what a capability actually is. The concept of capability has been criticized in several research articles where the authors have said that the concept of capability is not clearly defined. We ask ourselves if capability management is one of several management concepts for strategic alignment that as it reaches the IT industry become questions of business IT alignment. All in all, we can see that a couple of perspectives reappear in the articles, differentiating between what and how, where what is emphasized, discussion of who has the capability, the individual or the organization. Capability is constituted of resources where people, technology, information and equipment are recurring. A map metaphor is being used. We discuss our findings and make a number of tentative statements. A capability is an organizational action, which means that the combination of business and capability does not work, since the concept then contains a semantic contradiction. However, the concept of business capability entails a doing that can be performed with different levels of quality, which reasonably to be said can be related to the next conclusion, namely that a business capability requires resources, but we don't perceive this description to be comprehensive. There is much to suggest that the number of business capabilities in an organization should not be too many, since it would prevent the possibility of getting a clear overview. And finally, we are hesitant towards using the map metaphor, since it indicates that it describes something that already exists and is ready to be explored. There is a risk that the element of design is lost. But we could also note that we lack the organization's role in society, which would determine the opportunities and limitations in an organization's activity. Here are 3 examples. A public organization has an assignment that is described in structure and translated to a budget. There we also include finance as an important governing factor. Trends in society affect organizational culture as well as professional culture. Culture is also an important governing factor. Decision-making structure, the roles and the individuals whose capacity to govern should reasonably constitute the central resource in a business capability. We sum up the literature study with a tentative definition of capability, meaning organizational setting for action. We return to the correctional agency and compare the agency's maintenance object architecture with the result of the literature review. We start by cross-checking against the instruction and find that it matches well enough. The number of maintenance objects in relation to the recommended number of business capability is also fairly accurate. But what becomes quite obvious is that there is an imbalance between the business capability which is related to the assignment described in the correctional agency's instruction and the service and audit capabilities that are assigned to support the business. We return to our empirical data from the portfolio management evaluation and also make a small-scale analysis of our environment. The maintenance objects that can be attributed to the business are at the best as many as those that can be attributed to the service and audit practice. We therefore instead return to the digitalization strategy, which describes the client's path through a more digitized correctional system. This is what it looked like when Kenneth illustrated the scenarios in the digitalization strategy. Charlie has been detained for 4 years and his or her whole life is within the correctional agency at this point. Charlie goes to school, Charlie falls ill, Charlie undergoes a treatment program, and Charlie's family keep the contact. In each scenario, digital resources play a central role. This illustrates that digital resources are carriers of many perspectives. As we automate, this becomes more and more obvious since a digital resource can conduct actions. We are shifting into an era of technology in which a digital resource can learn by itself if it's fed with data. By using a new method for developing the digitalization strategy, in which we took pains to understand the client's path, we also laid the foundation for the correctional agency's business capabilities. We don't know yet if we will use the concept of business capability, but the diagnosis has given us an understanding of what it is. Kenneth and I now have a tentative answer to our question. Business capability can act as a bridge between portfolio and architectural management, if we put the business capability in the foreground and the service and audit capability in background. We also ask ourselves if perhaps the reason why we could not examine other organizations' business capabilities was that the initiative to do capability mapping comes from the IT department, which does not have enough knowledge about the organization's business as a whole. In that case, this is not a new phenomenon, since the problem has been discussed both in practice and in research since the 1980s. In the description text, you will find the main references. Thank you for your attention.